What if aging wasn't an ending, but a dance with eternity? What if every wrinkle was a scar of wisdom, every silver hair a testament to a soul being reconfigured? Most were never taught to ask this question. They taught you to fight. They taught you to resist. But there's a secret that Thoth, the cosmic scribe of the Emerald Tablets, knew, and that ancient cultures guarded as treasure. The body ages, but consciousness doesn't have to. While billions believe aging is decline, there's a hidden physics operating behind the scenes. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every loss of strength is actually code, a signal that you're being reconfigured, that energies are being transmuted, that you're dying and being reborn simultaneously every single second. Thoth knew that physical death is just the most obvious form of transformation, but there exists another death, invisible, continuous, that liberates you while you still live. And that's what we're about to reveal here. Most people see aging as defeat, as if you're losing in a game against time, but the tablets reveal something radically different. Thoth describes time not as a straight line leading to nothing, but as an ascending spiral. You're not walking toward death, you're being distilled, refined, concentrated. Think about wine. Young wine is effervescent without depth, but let it age in an ancient oak barrel for decades, and it transmutes completely. Complex flavor emerges. Layers that didn't exist before appear. What seemed weak, just fermented juice, becomes precious, rare, irreplaceable. It's not time that destroys the wine. It's time that perfects it. And that's exactly what Thoth knew about you. But there's a condition most don't want to face. Researchers at Stanford University and Princeton University have discovered something that confirms ancient wisdom. The brain ages, but can become wiser. Neural plasticity changes, but doesn't disappear. Connections reorganize. And when they reorganize under consciousness guidance, when you're present, when you're learning, when you're reflecting deeply, real neurological transmutation occurs. Memory may decrease in speed, but increases in quality. You don't remember everything, but what you remember you understand. You comprehend the context. You comprehend why it mattered. You comprehend the lessons hidden in events. Thoth called this life synthesis. You're not losing time, you're compiling, organizing, condensing decades of wisdom into meaning structures that only seers can perceive. But here's the detail most refuse to accept. This transmutation isn't automatic. It's not enough to just get old. You have to age consciously. According to the tablets, there are two types of death that occur while you live. The first is death of the body, slow, inevitable, that everyone fears. The second is continuous, invisible, and only occurs if you consent. It's the death of the unquestioning ego, the death of blind ambition, the death of the fear that keeps you small, the death of the illusion that you are merely your body. And this second death, this spiritual death, is what truly liberates you. When you're young, you're trapped in a powerful illusion. You believe your physical strength defines your worth, that your youth is your power, that aging is the enemy, that each passing year is theft. But as time passes, if you're conscious, truly conscious, you discover a terrifying and liberating truth. Your body has always been a prison, and time is freeing you from it, slowly, lovingly, piece by piece. Each capacity that diminishes opens space for a capacity you never knew you possessed. Your physical vision worsens, but your inner vision sharpens. Your body becomes less agile, but your mind becomes deeper. Your face loses the beauty of youth, but gains the beauty of truth. Like a tree that over decades loses its tender leaves, but whose roots deepen, seeking wisdom sources that were previously hidden. You're not diminishing. You're becoming more root, more foundation, more real. Thoth inscribed in the tablets that there's a critical point in life, a turning point where you stop fighting against aging and begin conversing with it. The conversation is uncomfortable at first. You ask, "Why is my body abandoning me?" And time responds, "Because you can now survive without it. Here is freedom." At this point, resistance ceases, and in its place emerges an acceptance so profound that peace finally arrives. Not the peace of someone who gave up, but the peace of someone who understood. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute discovered something extraordinary about heart coherence in elderly people living with purpose and vitality. Their hearts beat differently. Literally, There's a synchronization between heartbeats and brain activity that signals an expanded consciousness state, as if the heart knew something the rational mind hasn't yet comprehended. And you know why? Because the heart ages differently than the mind. While the brain connects to increasingly more analysis, the heart simplifies, learns to love more silently, more deeply, without drama, without need for proof. Marina discovered this at 67 years old. During youth, she had everything: beauty, energy, intense relationships based on passion. But she lived constantly anxious, always seeking validation, always comparing herself, always afraid of losing. Her body was a fortress of tension, her relationships, security negotiations. Then, without warning, her body began changing. Her face wrinkled, her energy diminished. And for 2 years, she fought against this desperately, used expensive creams, did desperate exercises, tried to stay young. But the more she fought, the more miserable she became. It was like swimming against the current while watching her strength disappear. Every day was defeat. Until one ordinary day, nothing special, she sat on a park bench, observed people passing, and something inside her recognized. They were all fighting. Young people fighting to look good, old people fighting to look young, everyone trapped in a war no one could win. In that moment, she simply stopped. She looked at her wrinkled hands and said, "These hands created life, offered comfort, created beauty. Now they're telling me something new." And in that moment, not of thought, but of deep presence, she felt a sensation without words. It wasn't relief, it wasn't sadness. It was as if the veil of illusion fell, and she saw she had never aged. She had just become more real. Her breathing changed, her face changed. It was as if all the tensions she'd carried for decades simply dissolved. Not because they magically disappeared, but because she stopped resisting them, and in acceptance they lost their power. After that, everything changed. Her relationships became deeper because she no longer needed validation. She knew her worth. Her work became meaningful because she didn't worry about competition. She just wanted to serve. Her intelligence expanded because she stopped spending energy on anxiety. She could spend it on understanding, on wisdom. But here's what Thoth revealed that's critical. This isn't a guaranteed destiny. There are 2 possible aging paths. One is the transformation we described. The other is stagnation and bitterness. The difference between them is entirely about contact. If you remain in contact with life, with curiosity, with learning, with service, with meaning creation, aging becomes alchemy. Losses become detachments. Time becomes depth. You die while living, but this death isn't ending, it's continuous liberation. If you lose contact, if you surrender to fear, to complaint, to rigidity, to refusal to grow, then aging is just decline. Your losses remain as losses. Your time becomes just boredom passing. You're technically alive, but spiritually already dead. Raphael learned this the hard way. For 40 years, he worked at the same company, did the same work, thought the same thoughts. His world was small, predictable, safe. When he retired at 65, he expected to finally rest, dreamed of travel, hobbies, peace. But within 6 months, he fell into deep depression. His body aged rapidly. His doctors couldn't find anything wrong, but he was dying, literally dying from lack of purpose. Then his granddaughter asked for help with a project, something completely new, outside his comfort zone. He refused, several times, but she insisted with patience, and reluctantly he accepted. During the first months, it was arduous. His brain had to work differently, had to learn new tools, had to think in ways he wasn't accustomed to. Frequently he felt stupid, inadequate. His mind complained constantly, but with each new concept he learned, something singular occurred. It was as if dormant cells in his body awakened. A year later he was a different man. Not just mentally. His posture changed, his energy returned, his face gained brightness. The same people who saw him dying now saw him living. His body hadn't magically rejuvenated, but his consciousness had expanded, and the body simply obeyed. Thoth knew that life is movement. Stasis is death. Nature doesn't allow vacuum. Either you're growing or you're deteriorating. There's no neutrality, no pause. If you follow life's movement, you flourish. If you resist, you wither. But there's a paradox here that's important you feel in its totality. Growth requires death. Transformation requires loss. To evolve spiritually, you have to abandon who you were. And this hurts deeply, because who you were, even if imperfect, even if suffering, was familiar, was safe, was the only identity you knew. The young person feels the relief of change because they don't have enough past to cling to. Everything is new. Everything is promise. But the elder carries decades of identity, of crystallized habits, of certainties that became part of their bone. Asking them to die, even spiritually, is asking them to abandon the only security they know, is asking them to leap into the void. That's why many elders don't age well. Not because their body fails, but because their soul refuses necessary transformation. They prefer staying frozen in images of themselves as they were, rather than transforming into what they can become. And that's what kills, literally kills. Research from multiple institutions has documented that mortality rate spikes in individuals who lose sense of purpose, who become rigid in their identities, who stop reinventing themselves. It's as if the body receives the mind's message. You don't need to fight anymore, you can stop. So what's the secret? How do you age well? How do you transform aging from enemy into teacher? The answer is simple, and more difficult than anything you've ever done. You have to say yes to continuous death. Each day is a blank canvas, and each dawn you have the opportunity to unveil yourself, to cast away what no longer belongs to your soul. When you wake, you're no longer who you were yesterday. The cells composing you are new. The thoughts you'll have are different. You're a new being visiting a familiar body. If you choose to remain attached to old grudges, old identities, old fears, you age poorly, bitterly, rigidly. Your body can't keep up because your soul isn't moving. It's stagnant, beginning to rot. But if you choose to let die, if you question who you believed yourself to be, if you learn new things, if you love more broadly, if you serve more deeply, then something extraordinary occurs. Your body still ages, wrinkles still come, strength still diminishes. But you're not rotting, you're fermenting, becoming more refined, like wine that passes decades in the darkness of the barrel until it becomes liquid gold. And then comes the most beautiful part of this entire process. When you embrace continuous death, when you die every day spiritually, you cease fearing final death, because you've already died thousands of times. You know there's another side. You know something in you persists, something that can't be touched by death, something eternal. The ancient Egyptians knew this. That's why Thoth recorded so many practices about death and rebirth, not because he feared death, but because he'd understood that life was continuous death and resurrection. With each breath, billions of cells die. With each thought, the self you were a moment ago dies. Each night you die in sleep and resurrect the following morning. Thomas was a monk who reached 92 years in a monastery in Tibet. It wasn't an ordinary monastery. It was a place where they practiced death meditation daily. Each morning, he imagined his death in detail, imagined his body disintegrating, imagined his lungs ceasing, imagined the final moment arriving. Not because it was morbid, but because when you die in your imagination frequently, real death loses its power. You know it so well it's no longer an unknown enemy. It's a familiar partner who finally arrived to take you home. In his final days, Thomas was taken to the hospital. Doctors said he had hours to live, but he was at peace, complete, absolute peace, like someone who finally arrived where they intended. His friends around him apologized for his approaching death. And he said softly, "Why apologize? I've lived a full life, I died each day, now I just leave the body, but the true part of me, I've been through this thousands of times." And he smiled, and slept, and didn't wake. His friends said he appeared in death more alive than he'd ever been, as if his essence freed itself from the body, like birds leaving a cage. This is what Thoth revealed in the tablets. That death isn't the opposite of life. Death is part of life. It's the force that orchestrates all transformation. If you learn to dance with death, if you learn to die well, then you learn to live well. Because when you're dying every day, Leaving behind attachment, fear, ego, you release colossal energy. All that energy being spent on resistance, on defense, on fear, on attachment is released, and this energy becomes available for love, for creation, for real transformation. That's why the wise seem so alive when they age, so brilliant, so true. Not despite their age, but because they embraced the death that age brings, and through that death found the life that transcends time, a life that doesn't depend on young cells or hormones or physical strength, a life that springs from pure consciousness, from pure love, from pure wisdom. Modern physics is beginning to confirm this. The field of epigenetics, which studies how your thoughts and emotions affect genetic expression, shows that aging isn't determined primarily by genetics. It's determined primarily by your attitude toward life. People who believe they can grow, who feel purpose, who continue learning and transforming, their bodies simply age more slowly. As if cells listen to the music your consciousness is playing. As if time respects those who respect it. You're not just a spectator of your aging, you're the architect of it. And then we arrive at the final mystery, what Thoth revealed about what happens after this, after you embrace death, after you stop resisting aging, after you allow continuous transformation. What he revealed about the cycle that comes after this spiritual death, the rebirth that follows this continuous death. This changes absolutely everything you thought you knew about life, but that's for another moment. For now you have a practice, a small death to embrace. For 7 days upon waking before leaving bed, close your eyes. Feel the death that is the sleep from which you just emerged. Feel the self you were yesterday, with its fears, its limitations, its certainties. Now with a deep breath say internally, the one who was dies here. Who am I now? Let the answer come, not as thought, as sensation, as presence, as knowledge without words, and then rise. Live this new day with that new self, dying and being reborn each hour, each moment, because you're not aging to die. You're living to be reconfigured, and each death is a step toward real life, the one no time can touch. If this awakens something ancient within you, if you recognize the death you need to embrace, comment below just 2 words that complete this sentence: I release. These 2 words aren't just a comment. They're your declaration, your permission to let go, your first step into the continuous death that leads to eternal life. When enough of us declare what we're releasing, we create a field of transformation that elevates everyone in this community. The conversation with time has begun, and you'll never be the same once you truly understand that you're not aging. You're awakening,